The Startup Hour, giving entrepreneurs education, motivation, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs from all corners of the country. The Startup Hour is a weekly business program bringing successful Zambian entrepreneurs, policymakers, and subject experts to share their stories, answer your burning business questions, and inform you on best practices. Tune in to the Startup Hour every Tuesday from 9 a.m. Startup Hour in association with Power FM.
A very good morning to you. My name is Patrick Chifwambua. This is a Startup Hour, a weekly program, business program, bringing successful Zambian entrepreneurs, policymakers, and subject experts to share their stories and inform you on best practices. It also aims to give entrepreneurs, both young and old, education, motivation, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs from all corners of the country. Today on the Startup Hour, we discuss Zambia's economic transformation in the 21st century with Mr. Mark O'Donnell, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mwapech Saka Jr. Today's guest, Mark O'Donnell, is a serial entrepreneur. That is someone running, starting, managing multiple businesses. Mr. O'Donnell was born in Zambia and went to school here as well. Mr. O'Donnell first started out selling car parts, moved on to tomatoes, and even has some major involvement with Tough Stuff. That is a major Zambian glue brand. He is the chairman and managing director at Union Gold Group Limited. Union Gold has been in operation since 2000. Union Gold has branched out into many diversified sectors throughout the years in order to compete in the business world on multiple fronts. The group operates departments in order to streamline its services and provide a more focused approach to its work. These branches help to clarify Union Gold's management operations and its family of companies when strategically planning for the future. Union Gold has 6 departments, and their companies are involved in construction through Velos Enterprises Limited, Velos 6 Zambia Limited, in development through Arcades Development PLC, Platinum Gold Zambia, in distribution through Kazuma Enterprises Limited, in hospitality through Proche Hotels Zambia, and in manufacturing through Kalulushi Clay Bricks Limited, Kazuma Plastics Limited, Zambezi Roofing Limited, and finally but not least in retail through Mika Parts World Limited, Spa Zambia Limited, and the Wildlife Shop. Mark also holds a number of non-executive directorships, including Lafar Zambia Limited, Madison Life Insurance Company Limited, Care for Business Medical Center, the Zambia Bureau of Standards, Real Estates Investments Zambia Limited, and is chairman at the Tourism Council of Zambia, and is also a member of the Institute of Directors of Zambia. Welcome to the program, Mark.
Thank you, Patrick.
We're most pleased to have you. It is a pleasure indeed to have you on the program. We're happy to have you here to talk about your entrepreneurial journey and the larger issue of conducting business in Zambia and in Africa at large. I'll start with the quote, "Have faith in yourself and believe anything can be done." That's by Richard Branson. First off, what was it like growing up in Ndola in the colonial era?
Well, yes, Patrick, I was born here in Lusaka, and my family moved to Ndola when I was still a baby, and I grew up in Ndola, went to school there. I started schooling at Ndola Primary School in about 1963, I think it was, when I first started school. Ndola was a tiny, tiny little town, a beautiful little town, and I was at school there for about 5-6 years, and then my family moved back to Lusaka, where I transferred school and carried on at the international school. So, yeah, I did my entire school career here in Zambia, and yeah, Zambia was a different country in those days. It was things were a lot smaller. There were far less people around, and yeah, it was quite different today, and with lots of different challenges. I wouldn't say it was better. I would just say it was different, Patrick.
Different how? This was during the, I suppose you were around during the struggle of independence and going into independence, obviously in 1964, and would read stories about Zambia having maybe 100 graduates at the time of independence. On the business front, what was that like? How many, if at all, how many businessmen did we have at the time?
Look, first of all, the economy was a very small economy, and I was young at the time. I mean, I was only about 6 or 7 years old when Zambia became independent. So, for me, I really remember Zambia as always being independent. I don't actually remember it too much prior to that. But yes, it's true. I mean, there was a big transformation that had to take place. Most of the economy was in the hands of, the white elite, and Zambians had few opportunities, and a lot of measures had to be taken to give Zambians opportunities through training, through education, through skills development, to be able to come into the workplace, to take on key and major roles. And there was a very big Zambianization program at the time, promoting Zambians, and I think that was universally welcomed. I don't think it was done in such a way that people felt excluded, but it was needed. It was universally welcomed. It had to be done to get the economy to grow, and it had to be done to get Zambia on a track where more people could participate and gain benefit from the economy.
Fast track to your early teen, you being about 18 years old. You started your career quite young. A majority of our listeners are young and starting out. How did you overcome the barrier, of being young in the business sector?
So I was at school, and I was never. I wouldn't say I was a great student, and I always felt that I wanted to do something other than go to school. So when I was 18 years old, I took a conscious decision to leave school and go into business. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to do something different. And I went and got myself a job. On Cairo Road, I was working for a company that was selling car parts. I started there thinking I knew everything at 18 years old, like you do. You think you know everything that there is to know. And the reality is that when you get a job at 18, the first thing you find out is that you actually know nothing. And that's when your education really begins. So I think that's what, from the age of 18, I started selling car parts. And in the company I was working for, I rose up through the ranks, eventually became the manager of that company. And I had a great time doing it. I learned plenty. I was right on the forefront of dealing with the public, which is always a good thing to do in your early career, is to deal with the public. Because the public is harsh. I mean, they have expectations, and if you don't meet those expectations, they're very harsh with you. You don't need a boss to tell you you're not working. When you're dealing with the public tell you if you're not doing a good job. So it's a very harsh experience, but a good experience. And certainly any young person should have that kind of experience at some point in their early career.
Mm-hmm. I want to stay on the part of the way you started off in selling auto parts, and obviously now that seems to be a big business today. What differences do you see now as opposed to the time you started?
When I started, I mean, there was far less vehicles on the road. Business was much more structured. There were very few companies doing the things. Today, I mean, look, there's hundreds and thousands of vehicles on the road, and those vehicles present great opportunities to supply parts, to service vehicles, to deal in tires and so on. So it's the whole industry is a lot bigger. I mean, the vehicle pool in Zambia must be 20 times larger than it was when I first started out. So things have evolved a lot.
Most businesses, as we know, are started out of a need, trying to solve a certain problem. And this is what you've done through most of your businesses, even though most times you didn't have the resources required to start that business. So would you say the basis of starting a business is to solve a need?
I wouldn't say it's to necessarily solve a need, but I think you see opportunities where somebody else is not meeting those opportunities, and that creates an opportunity for you to come along. And it might be you can do it better, you can do it cheaper, you can do it more efficiently, and you might, through the ideas you have. And I think that's I guess at the end of the day you can say it's through a need that exists. I mean, and the need that exists is quite simple. The consumer, he wants to pay less money, and he wants to get more service, and he wants better quality. So if you can deliver to that expectation, I think there's an opportunity for you in your business. Yes.
It is solving a need.
Yes.
Talking about resources, we hear most young people would say, I don't have the money needed to start this business, so I won't start the business. But you jumped this barrier. How did you do that?
I think the first thing is that I speak to quite a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, and they always tell me that finances are their biggest problems. But I don't necessarily agree with that. Finance is one of the problems they faced with. I think what we need to understand is that business is done between people. It's not done between companies. It's done between people. It's somebody at the end of the phone. It's somebody that you meet. It's done face to face. Business is done between people, and people are the most important assets that any business has. And I think what we've got to do is as entrepreneurs, we've got to recognize that. So when dealing with people have you've got to be passionate, you've got to be enthusiastic, you've got to be decisive, you've got to be committed to what you're doing, because if you can meet the expectation of the person that you're meeting with, that you're meeting with, it's much easier to do business with them. So if they give you an order, for example, to do something, and you say you're delivering it on Monday at 10 o'clock, don't do it on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, because that's just not going to work. And therefore, if you develop this, if you develop a culture within yourself that you're going to be reliable, that you're going to be honest, you're going to be doing the things that you say you're going to do, it makes it a lot easier to do business with other people. And therefore, once that begins to happen, the issue of finances and machines and buildings starts to fall into place. When people know that they can rely on you to do business, and that you are going to be straightforward and honest and punctual, and you're going to deliver on time, I think it makes it very easy to take the next step in your business career. And it's like the next step might be that you have to go to a financial institution. But if you can demonstrate to that financial institution some sort of track record that you got orders, you delivered them, you got paid for them, and the reason that you want the finance is maybe to expand, to buy a vehicle, a piece of machinery or something, it makes it a lot easier. It's not necessarily automatic, but it does make it a lot easier. And I see a lot of people in business not taking that first step, but just trying to go to the second step of going into a bank saying, look, I want a loan to do this. And the bank says, well, what have you done? And you haven't done anything. So how do straight away you're rejected. But that's not to mean that you shouldn't try it again. I mean, every time we get rejected from something, it's a learning experience. And we have to go back, understand why we got, try to understand why we got rejected, and restructure ourselves so that next time we don't get rejected for the same reason. I mean, when I was starting out, I had these same challenges: how to convince people to trust you, to believe in you, to support you. I mean, it's there's no simple answer. There's no single simple answer that. But we managed over the years to show to people that we could do the things that we said we could do, and bit by bit it opened things up. We started very small, and the next one's a little bigger and a little bigger, and eventually, we had people looking at us more closely, saying, oh, these guys do what they say they're going to do, and they're honest, and they pay back the money, and and we're prepared to lend them again. And the next time is a bit bigger again, and so it goes on. So it's not just one big step, but it's a series of lots and lots of little steps to get to that big step where there's progress.
I want to ask this: how did you go about? You said you had rejection a few times in your businesses. How do you go back to the drawing board? And then, if your bid for let's say financing has been rejected, how do you go back to the drawing board? And because it seems to happen more often now, you go to the bank and your application for loan is denied. How do you go about what would be the step-by-step method
So some people say that you're only as good as the questions you ask. So I would advise people that if you get rejected from something, go back and ask the questions. Why were you rejected? What were the reasons that you couldn't get the support you were looking for? And don't take no for an answer. Certainly interrogate the people as to why you were rejected. And then take those answers and go back and analyze those answers. And say, right, next time I'm going to do this, these are the points I have to take care of so that I don't make the same mistake again. Rejection is very much a part of being an entrepreneur. It's easy to look up to the famous entrepreneurs around the world and say, look at them, they're so lucky. But they're not so lucky. They did a lot of work to get where they are. And they took a lot of failure. If you haven't failed at something, you're definitely not an entrepreneur. Not everything works the way you want it to work in the first place, and you have to be determined. You have to understand what the failure was, go back and do it again, and do it again. And sometimes you do it 10, 20, 30 times. I mean, I've put applications in for things 20, 30 times. We just don't take no for an answer. And every time the answer is no, we ask why. What is it? What is wrong here? What are you as the bank or the financial institution or the customer? What is it that you don't like about what we're trying to do? Tell us, so that we can understand and we can do it better. So it's a lot of determination and I see a lot of young entrepreneurs. They got a great idea. They've done something. They've had one little success, and now they're trying for that very big step, and they're told no, and they just give up. But that's not what it's about. You really have to put a lot of effort into looking for those small steps of progress and working with them.
So it's safe to say that as a young entrepreneur, it's better to grow gradually rather than try to take a quantum leap.
I think what you have to do as a young entrepreneur is, first of all, understand that there's going to be disappointments along the way, and take those little steps and find your feet, find what you're good at, find what you're passionate about. And business is very much, an entrepreneur is very much about being passionate about what you do. It's about closing your mind to everything else and just focusing on what you're really passionate about, and just keep doing it, finding those little steps. And as you find those little steps, you'll find that those little steps become bigger and bigger. And eventually you're suddenly doing things that you never thought were possible.
When you started out at 18 years old, selling car parts, when did you realize what your passion was? When did you know that I'm going this direction? Because it seems a lot of young people, try a little bit of everything. I'm doing pigs, I'm doing chickens, and I'm doing tomatoes, and then I'm going to sell this, and I'm going to sell cars. And when did you discover that I want to do this, and that's been your main driving force over the years?
I think when I was at school, I realized that what I wanted to do was go out into life and earn my own way, earn my own income, and be able to look after myself. And I just had this passion that that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be able to have a lifestyle that could give me what I wanted in life. And when I was 18, that's what I realized. So I somehow at school didn't see that was the route to achieving that. Other people do. I'm not just trying to say to everybody by any. In fact, it's really ridiculous to leave school at 18. You should go on as long as you can and get degrees if you can get those degrees. But yeah, it's about, I had this passion that I wanted to go out and make my own way in life. And so it started then. And then when I started working and started getting a salary, the first thing you think is, well, how can I do better? What is it that I can do that takes me further in life? And I sold car parts. I then started dabbling around in manufacturing a few things. I had a farm where we used to be able to. I grew tomatoes. I came and sold the tomatoes in Soweto Market, and it always amuses me when people look down on that, because that is a very ruthless, cutthroat business where everybody knows what they're doing. if you can successfully sell tomatoes in Soweto, you're definitely on the way to being a very good entrepreneur, because it's just difficult. And the people know what they're doing. I mean, that's the most incredible market, because their price is one price one day and it's another price the next day, and people know how to trade in that environment. So it was a really good experience to understand how that business worked.
Did you have a moment where you decided, okay, I no longer need a salary, I need to generate my own income? As in, I'm not going to work for someone else.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, the way it happened, yes, I was able to transition from a formal work environment into my own sort of business environment. And we were doing all sorts of things at the time. As I say, we dabbled in manufacturing. I mean, bearing in mind, you've got to understand what the environment was like. I mean, I'm talking about the 1980s and 1990s. Today, people complain the economy is difficult, but let me tell you, it's nowhere near as difficult as it was in the 1980s or the 1990s. So we dabbled in a lot of things, and I think being an entrepreneur, you've got to see what works for you and what doesn't work, and not to passionately hold on to the things that are not working. So some of the things we did, they just didn't work when we got rid of them, and the things that worked, we did more of. I think, and you've got to consciously make that decision. It's very easy to be passionate and want to hold on to everything you've ever done, but it comes a point you just got to start cutting off and saying, I need to focus on which way I need to go now.
This is the Startup Hour. Today we're discussing Zambia's economic transformation in the 21st century with Mr. Mark O'Donnell. I'm joined by my co-host, Mwape Chisaka. Mwape, question for you.
Mark, we're currently facing a major power deficit in the country, and you touched on manufacturing. Many articles and scholars say value addition, manufacturing is the way for Zambia to go. But a critical component of manufacturing is power, electricity. So how do we bridge that gap?
I think you're absolutely right. I think to say that there's only one direction for the economy being manufacturing is not the correct thing. The economy needs people doing things in every single sector, from tourism, manufacturing, mining, services, and so on. And I think that's how you build a robust and strong economy. It's to be as diverse as possible in what you do. But manufacturing, yes, they say that energy is about development. So the more energy a country produces and uses, the more development it can achieve. And I think that's pretty standard around the world. And when you've got power deficits, it means that you're not necessarily achieving your development potentials. So when we have these power cuts and people can't weld and they can't sew and they can't do these things because the power is off, yes, it not only makes them less productive, but it puts up the cost of their production, because if you're paying labor to weld and there's no power, you're paying the labor to do nothing, and that makes it expensive. So it's important to overcome the power deficits. But, many of these things are in our control. Generators are available, fuel is available. Yes, they cost money, but, surely there's ways that people can overcome this. Because they need to make a plan. You have to plan for these things. We know that power is going to be off, so how do we plan for it? How do we obtain generators? How do we get the fuel? How do we price our goods so that we can pay for these things? And I think these are the things that we have to start. Good entrepreneurs think about them, and they overcome those challenges.
Do you think? Do you think that we went wrong somewhere in terms of planning for our energy needs? Was there a time when we should have known that we needed to seriously invest in energy production?
I think the time for that was many years ago, 20 years ago, because we've known for many years that there are opportunities to develop new sources of power in Zambia, like, for example, Kufui's Stage 2, which has been on the cards for nearly 30 years. So we've known about it, and we didn't make the investment commitments that we should have made when we should have made them. So we didn't do it then. So when is the next best time to do it? It's to do it now. We need to make some commitments to developing our energy needs. Because there's no question that Zambia has got great opportunity in the power sector. And we can become an exporter of power if we develop those power resources. But we have to make commitments to them, and we have to start, and get moving on it. Mm-hmm. So it's never too late. It is never too late in business. There's always a new opportunity around the corner. So the challenges that we have today present opportunities for tomorrow, and we can capitalize on those if we do the right things.
Speaking of opportunity, with this power deficit, obviously, as a businessman, you might see an opportunity. The question is it viable? Some will argue, for instance, that we need cost-reflective tariffs in order for the energy sector to be, viable and attractive to local foreign investment. Well, what's your take on that?
I think, when you build a house, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure your foundations are strong. Because as you build your house, if your foundations are not strong, your house begins to crack. And nobody wants to have a cracked house. I think that's the problem. And that's exactly the same issue that we're talking about in this respect. We've got to, whatever we do, we've got to do it on strong foundations. And if we don't have cost-reflective tariffs and they're subsidized, at some point in the future, those subsidies are going to come back to haunt us and cause us more problems than we currently have. So there has to be cost-reflective tariffs. But not only that, the tariffs have to be competitive. And most importantly, they have to be competitive with tariffs in neighboring countries. It can't be that Zambia's tariff is double or treble what is prevailing in our neighboring countries, because if it is, we will not be competitive. Our goods will not be exportable because they'll be too expensive. So what we have to do in Zambia is we have to be conscious that we are in the middle of Central Southern Africa, and whatever we do, we have to be competitive with it.
Let's move on to the tourism sector. 60% of wealthy foreigners in North America, Asia, Europe have never heard of Zambia. Tourism has been held back in Zambia because of some bureaucratic tendencies and red tape. How do we raise Zambia's profile in the key source markets and also increase interest to come into Zambia, either through leisure tourism or for business travel? I know you've been involved in tourism for quite a number of years now.
Yes, in fact, it's one of the main pillars of our business through our hotels that we own and operate. So it's really important to us that the tourist sector is a viable sector. I think the first thing is Zambia's profile on the world markets is not as high as it could be. And I think for that we have to invest money in marketing Zambia through the Zambia Tourist Agency. There's a very small budget there, but maybe that budget needs to be increased. But the interesting thing is that we commissioned some research about 2 or 3 years ago where we went around the world and we asked people from all over Asia, Europe, America, what are the reasons that you would want to come to Zambia? And as you rightly say, many of them hadn't heard of Zambia, but when it was explained to them where Zambia was, they said, right, the first thing we believe is that we want to come and see wildlife, and about 30% of the respondents said wildlife. The next 30% said adventure, and in Livingston we have one of the most exciting adventure destinations in the entire world. Mm-hmm. So we have that. And then the third thing that came in as a reason with about another 30% respondents was culture. People from around the world say that they want to come to Zambia to experience Zambian culture and Zambian hospitality. And that's something I think in Zambia that we don't pay enough attention to. We just seem to think that people only come here for wildlife or they come here for the adventure, but they don't come here for the culture. When the rest of the world is telling us, yes, we will come to Zambia because of the culture that you have to offer, the food, the people, and the cultural experience.
Mm-hmm. So if we need to create the hundreds of thousands of jobs that we need in the tourism sector, why are we not seriously looking at this industry as the next big thing?
It's very true. I mean, the tourist sector is one of the lowest cost entries that there is to get into business. If there's a viable tourist industry, then there are many, many thousands of Zambians that can start their own businesses to service that industry, be it from taxis to restaurants to curios to shops and so on. So it's a very low-cost entry point, far lower than manufacturing or mining, and it involves many, many more people. So it's a great industry to start with. So why are people not coming here? One is that maybe we don't promote as well as we could. And the second thing is that Zambia is a very expensive destination to get to. We are served by very few airlines. People don't drive any longer to visit places. They want to fly. And if we haven't got a developed airline sector, then people are not going to come in the numbers that they could be coming. So we really have to attract and retain more foreign airlines, to fly into Zambia. Because every time an airplane lands and it discharges 200 or 300 people, those are visitors that are now 100% dependent on, as a tourist, you become 100% dependent on what the country has to offer in terms of food, in terms of sleeping arrangements, and so on and so on. So, if we can develop the airline sector and open it up and bring prices down. I mean, this year, I was just listening to a report, there are 3 billion people around the world who get onto airplanes this year. And the numbers coming to Zambia are minute a minute percentage of that number. And, they're all getting onto low-cost carriers. They're only paying a couple of $100 to fly all over the world. And this is what we have to see in Zambia, not only to bring foreigners into Zambia, but to enable Zambians to also travel and to travel affordably. And that's a very essential part of developing the tourist industry.
Let me ask you this: if we did something, say for instance, in the airline industry, if we did something similar to what was done in the early 1990s in the auto transport industry, where everything was zero rated, you could bring in buses, can we do something similar in the aviation industry to allow maybe multiple airlines, to come into Zambia?
I think you're absolutely right. What happened in the 1990s with the bus sector was unbelievable, actually. From having no buses, and people would sleep at the bus station for 2 or 3 days, now you can get on a bus from anywhere to anywhere in a matter of minutes, and the prices are affordable. And Zambians sort of really invested in that sector. I don't think there's any foreign players in the bus sector in Zambia. I think it's dominated by, it's 100% Zambian owned and managed and run. So it shows that, yes, there are opportunities. There's absolutely no reason why it can't happen in the aviation industry. All we have to do is open our skies up and have complete open skies and let people operate. It's very similar to buses. The only difference is the numbers involved. The value of the aircraft are so much larger, and there is a safety component too. But it's basically an airplane is a bus that flies. It moves people from one place to the other, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be having a similar approach in the aviation sector. I think if you go, for example, to Johannesburg Airport and you just look at the hundreds of planes landing there every day and the volume of people that are coming into Johannesburg from within the country, from all over the world, those people are bringing huge sums of money into Johannesburg for business, for commerce, for pleasure, for tourism, and so on. And we should be doing something similar in Zambia.
There's been talk of a national airline. Do you think that is affecting our tourist arrivals? And should we seriously contemplate having a national carrier once again?
I think the difficulty that I have with the national carrier is that this talk is preventing the industry from opening up. I think what's important is not who owns the airplanes, but the fact that the airplanes come here and bring people. And I think that's what's important to me. To me, it doesn't matter who is the owner of the airplane. So long as Zambians are able to participate, I think that's the main thing. So long as jobs are available in the industry and Zambians can participate, that's what we must worry about. It doesn't matter who owns the airplanes, I don't think,
All right. Mark, people will tend to sometimes reject your ideas and not believe in you. Not you necessarily, but yeah, just
even me. Yeah.
Especially for most youth, you find we'll stop pursuing an idea because someone didn't put in what we expected to get out of that idea. I'd like you to use an example of the hotels, how you got into the hotels.
Yes, it's absolutely true. I mean, not everybody believes in what you do, and you certainly get your critics. And if you... Yes, I mean, constructive criticism is good, and you have to listen to constructive criticism and you have to make your own judgment about that constructive criticism. But some criticism is just plain destructive. It comes about because of jealousy, because of family, because of all sorts of things, and people, they get jealous and they just want to set out to destroy people. So yes, I think if the constructive criticism is good, you can use it. We started our hotel business long before we were Protea Hotels, in about 1997. We built a small lodge outside Lusaka with 20 rooms, as many people are doing these days, because we had this fantastic idea that if we built something outside Lusaka, people would come and they would enjoy and they would stay with us and so on, and that was an automatic step to getting wealthy. Well, the reality was that when we built it, we didn't get much response, to be frank, and we really struggled. We struggled for about 3 years. And it was an extremely difficult time for us because we really became demoralized and wondered if we'd done the right thing. And then we had this idea, we looked at the reasons why it wasn't working. And we realized that we needed to get on a global distribution system to be able to get bookings from not only within Lusaka but from further afield. So we did that by doing a franchise deal with Protea Hotels in South Africa. And we only had this small 20-room lodge. And so we franchised with Protea. And then once we became Protea and we had access to that distribution system, it began to change a lot of things in our business and what we were doing. So we were able to build a second hotel, which there was a great opportunity in Chingola at the time. So we went ahead and built a hotel in Chingola, and the week we opened that hotel, Anglo-American on the mines there announced that they were pulling out of the mines. So the week we opened the hotel, Anglo-American withdrew from the mines, which caused us an immense amount of problems. We operated that hotel with almost no occupancy for the first 3 years, and we had bills to pay. And this is where it becomes really important, I think. We met every single commitment to everybody in a timely manner on that hotel, even though we didn't have any business in that hotel. So we paid our financiers on time, we paid our staff on time, nobody was let down. And in order to do that, we had to take money from our pockets to do it. And I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize, that if you're employing staff, you have to look after them, you have to pay them, you have to pay them on time, you can't not pay them and disappoint them. So we looked after our staff, we met all our commitments to our financiers, and after about 3 years the problems in the mines in Chingola began to get resolved and business began to pick up, and we were then able to sort out things in that hotel. And once that happened, we were able to then look at another investment, and so we grew from 20 rooms to 40 rooms. Then the next hotel was 70 rooms, and so on. So we, over the years, every time we did a project, we did it a little bit bigger. And that's what I say. Everything is an incremental step. And today, I think our hotel business, we are now the largest hotel operators in Zambia, and we're about to open our 7th hotel in Dola, which will open in July this year. So, and that definitely makes us the biggest hotel operator. So yes, it's achievable, but business is cyclical. I mean, you have your ups and downs. It's not that every year is going to be a great year. You have your years that are down, and you've got to, in the years when things are down, you've got to make sure that you don't let people down.
We'll take a short break. When we come back, Mark, I want to ask you, how do you stay in business for 3 years? without making a profit and still meet your obligations. We'll take a short break. We're talking to Mark O'Donnell, who is the chairman and managing director of Union Gold Group Limited. Union Gold has been in operation since 2000. Union Gold has branched out in many diversified sectors throughout the years in order to compete in the business world on multiple fronts.
The Startup Hour, giving entrepreneurs education, motivation, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs from all corners of the country.
Power FM, now streaming live. Listen to Lusaka's #1 hit station from anywhere, anytime. Go to power997.com. Power997.com.
The Startup Hour, giving entrepreneurs education, motivation, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs from all corners of the country.
Welcome back. We're talking to Mark O'Donnell, who's the managing director and chairman of Union Gold Limited, also owners of Protea Hotels in Zambia. You opened Protea Hotel in Chingola, the first hotel, I believe, and you had no business for 3 years. How do you manage to stay in for the long haul? What is the secret? Because I know of a few young entrepreneurs or old who after 2-3 months would throw in the towel and say, hey, it failed. I tried.
Yeah, and maybe what they were doing wasn't going to work anyway, and maybe they had to throw in the towel. And throw in the towel is the wrong thing, but maybe they have to go back and reanalyze and do something different, because not everything that we do works first time every time. If it did, it would be easy. We would all do it. But yeah, look, when we opened that hotel, we really struggled with it. There was no question about that. But I said at the beginning, I think the most important thing that you have in your business is your staff, and business is about people, and it's about your staff and your team. And I'm very fortunate that we've been able to build an incredible team in our business of incredible people. And when you explain to them the problems and the challenges, and everybody makes that little bit of extra effort to do a little bit more, it helps you get through these the difficulties. So we had our other hotel in Chisamba. We had our other components of our business that we had to take finance from to support the hotel in Chingola for that period of time. And we made sure that we met all our commitments, and we made sure that our staff, our team, they got their salaries on time every time, and I think they appreciated it, and many of those people are still with us today, because I think they do appreciate when you make that kind of effort and show that kind of commitment. That people want to stay with you. Because they feel they're part of something that's going in some direction. And I think, to me, that's quite important.
Mm-hmm. So your staff could see that the rooms were empty. There was literally no business for 3 years. Did you see, from a business perspective, did you see the light, the proverbial light at the end of the tunnel, that the mining sector will turn around after 3 years and it will eventually pick up? Or did you say, okay, I'll give it a 5-year try, and if this is a bottomless pit, we'll wrap it up?
I think the thing about the light in the tunnel, you don't know if it's the light of ending the tunnel or if it's the train coming to hit you. And I think that's it's always very discouraging. I mean, and when you find yourself in that position, you think that the pain will never end. But one thing you can predict with certainty is that change happens. It always happens. Not necessarily for good. It can be for bad too. But you can certainly predict that change takes place. So it's a question of holding in there as long as you can, and trying to understand what's going on around you. It's very lonely. When things are going well, you have plenty of friends. When things are not going well, nobody wants to talk to you. You've just got to sort of analyze what's going on and stick with it, and make the decisions. If you can, we had the choice of closing that hotel, and maybe if we could have closed it, or maybe if we could have sold it, we would have done that. But that just didn't happen, so we stuck with it, and we're very glad we did stick with it. It's since then paid dividends. It was a good decision to stick with that hotel.
So, in other words, it made you, as a company, it made you stronger.
Ultimately, yeah, because every challenge, that's presented to you, it's a new opportunity. Look at it as a new opportunity. It's like the power sector. There's a shortage of power, so it's an opportunity for somebody. The challenges we had there presented us with new opportunities too. I mean, it made us go and look, where else can we invest? What else can we do? We have to somehow pay the bills, So it created new opportunities for us at the same time.
Mark, this seems to be a running theme in your entrepreneurial journey, because I know when you built arcades and you had no occupancy as well in those shops for a while. Before we chatted about hope, and where you told me hope isn't really something you should depend on, you should have a plan. So what was the plan when arcades was empty?
So we built arcades, and bearing in mind that Manda Hill had recently opened, and the economy in Lusaka was much smaller then than it is today. And when we got our planning approval, so we started building arcades. And we did all sorts of creative things to work with people to try and get arcades off the ground. And when we built it, we had a couple of anchor tenants, and then we had to go out and find other tenants. And, it wasn't easy. We had empty space. And we went from shop to shop in Cairo Road and around the place looking for tenants, encouraging them to come to arcades. I mean, we managed to find some tenants that were trading on Cairo Road, and we gave them a good deal, and they were able to come into arcades. They were very apprehensive, I have to say. I mean, they didn't really see the benefit of what they were doing, but ultimately, the good thing was that when they did come into arcades, and they saw what a shopping mall can do for their business, I think they themselves were able to begin to grow their businesses, and some of them have since opened more branches in other malls and in other towns around Zambia. So, I think it's about working together with people, It's working together, trusting people, understanding them. It's not that... some people seem to have this very jealous approach to business, that it must all be mine, But business is about partnerships. It's about working with people, stakeholders, and but through cooperation, we can mutually benefit. There's no point in me doing well and you not succeeding. We must both do well, and I think that's the approach we've always taken with the people we do business with. I mean, a good deal is a deal where both people walk away happy. Not that one person walks away crying and the other person is laughing. That's a bad deal. A good deal is where both parties walk away happy.
You say the economy was much smaller when you opened arcades. How do you look at the economy now in terms of buying power of the Zambians, of the Zambian population at large?
Well, I mean, 20 years ago, the middle class of Zambia was extremely small. There was not that many people found themselves in the middle classes. But, the economy's grown at 6% every year since 2000, and that 6% compounds. And that 6% growth brings people into the middle classes, people that have more income, more disposable income, and who are able to build better lifestyles. And when you get people in the middle classes with disposable income, that in itself presents huge new investment opportunities. So whereas we started in Lusaka with Manda Hill, one shopping mall, look how many shopping malls are being built in Lusaka today. And that's to cater to this ever-increasing pool of middle-class people. And I think around the world, governments have this challenge of taking people out of poverty and bringing them into the middle classes where they can enjoy better lifestyles for themselves and their families. And I think Zambia is no different. We've, over the years, pulled many thousands of people out of poverty into the middle classes where they have better accommodation, they have access to motor vehicle, they have a good job, they have disposable income, they can go into shops and spend their money, and they can. So along the way, we've seen proliferation of shopping malls, new shops, and so on. I know that there's critics out there that say that this is not good, but frankly, it is good.
You took my next question out of my mouth. I read somewhere, I think it was an article in Forbes magazine, where you were referred to as the Mr. More Man. Do you? And I was about to ask, do you think there's such a thing as too many malls?
No, I don't think so. I think what's important is that we must have more and more access to goods. People must have more and more access to goods and services on their doorstep. They shouldn't have to travel too far to be able to have access to those kinds of goods and services. I mean, you go to a developed country. I mean, there's trading on everywhere you look. You see trading. You see factories. You see trading. You see activity everywhere you look. And why should it be that in Zambia we don't aim to have the same lifestyle that they have in other countries? I mean, I think if you don't aim high, you never achieve anything substantial. So it's about it. How do you aim as high as you can possibly aim, and then, if you don't get there and then you only get halfway, you've still achieved something very significant.
I wanted to ask you this. From one more you referred to, we started off with one more Manda here, and now we have quite a few. There's been a transformation. We're talking transformation of the economy in the 21st century. What's the next step as someone involved in retail, real estate? What's the next transformation that we need to be looking at as a nation? And if I may make this question twofold, in the tourism sector, how do we stop relying on foreign arrivals and maybe look at the domestic part of the tourism sector?
So our population today is about 15 million people. It's growing at the rate of 3.5% a year, which means that every single year there's at least almost another million Zambians living in the country. So by 2050, Zambia is going to have a population of something like 45 million or whatever that number, but it's going to be a very large number. So there's more and more people, and those people are going to have to do something, and they're going to have to contribute something, to the economy through the development of their skills and talents and so on. So when you look at the population growth of that magnitude, and in Southern Africa it's probably the highest in the world, and you then compare that to countries in Europe where the population is either stagnant or declining, you think, well, with this kind of population growth in Zambia, we must have more opportunity than anybody else, because there's more and more people that we can provide goods and services for. So it's like if you're producing something in your factory and you see that there's 1 million new Zambians every year, 1 million additional Zambians, surely that means you can grow the output of your factory. If you're in the retail trade and you see this, you think, well, maybe I can open more shops. Or if you're in the housing business, you think, well, how many more houses do we need to cater to these people that are going to be part of the economy in the next 15, 20 years? When somebody gets 20 years old, they become a contributor. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think the opportunities are there, but there's many challenges along the way. It's not just that it's going to be automatic, everybody will have money to spend. We have to have good policies in place that facilitate this massive growth of population that it's going to make Zambia a very different place in the next 20 years.
And in terms of the tourism sector, how do we start looking at domestic tourism? Because obviously there's like you say, there's quite a number of things that we need to do policy-wise to attract the foreign arrivals. How being in the hotel business, how do you see the domestic tourism sector being developed?
A lot of effort has been made on developing the domestic sector, and certainly the response is there. I mean, particularly over holiday periods, if you go to Livingston, you can see that the hotels are being filled up with local tourists, Zambian tourists. And, so Zambians are responding. But what we've got to do is we've got to make it easier and we've got to make it cheaper for them to be able to travel. And cheaper is relative. I mean, either you give them, they earn more money and it becomes relatively cheaper, or prices come down. So we've got to make it more accessible and easier for Zambians to travel domestically. And I think a lot of work has been done. I mean, it's a journey. It's not there will be an automatic answer tomorrow, but there's been a process, and we've seen that definitely from people staying in our hotels. We certainly see that there's been a big response. to getting Zambians to travel domestically within the country. But the other thing is to make it easier. if it's very difficult to fly around Zambia, and if we could make it easier for people to fly and cheaper for people to fly, more people would be doing it.
Mm-hmm. But being in the service industry, also through the hotels and the retail business, how do we further develop the sector? For instance, in terms of customer service, I know you referred to customer service at the beginning of the program. We see a lot of dissatisfied customers throughout the city in many different sectors. Because I'm asking this because we had a gentleman one time on the program who said, "Look, we have a potential to be, the next. We have a comparative advantage in terms of." The service sector, a lot of the youth, that are listening now are well-spoken, well-educated, and we can get into the service sector, and be the hub in the region and even the world. So how do we develop this sector further?
And it can only come through training and basically training. Giving people opportunities to learn new skills, to develop those skills, and to train further. And it's no different from anywhere in the world. The service industry is about creating a culture of service. And a lot of people coming into the industry don't understand that. And worse than that, it's not explained to them what the culture of service is all about. I think we spend an enormous amount of time in our hotels training people in service and in the culture of service. And we work with our people, and we're patient with our people, because, again, to train people, it's not something that happens overnight. It happens over a long period of time. So we look for people with good attitudes, good approach with a good work ethic, and then we will have the patience to work with them to develop their skills. Because at the end of the day, it's the team that makes the difference. It's our employees that make the difference. I don't interact with the customers. It's them that interact. And if the interaction is bad, it reflects on me. Mm-hmm. So I've got to make sure that I give my staff all the tools that they need to be able to interact with the customers in a very positive and constructive way. I've got to empower them with the ability to make decisions, so that if there is a problem, they know what to do about it, and they are confident to be able to solve those problems. I think in many cases I see in the service industry people not giving good service because either they don't know or they're worried about making a decision in case they get in trouble for making that decision. So they don't make a decision, and then the service seems to be poor. Mm-hmm. And I think these are the kind of things that we've got to develop in Zambia, and it takes time. I mean, the amount of... Just look at the restaurants in Lusaka. I mean, 20 years ago, maybe there was 5 or 10. Today, there's more than 200 restaurants. So imagine how many extra staff had to be employed to staff those 200 restaurants, and the training that had to go with it, and all the extra effort that was needed to bring the staff up to the necessary levels to offer a good service. So it's because it's one of the challenges is because things have expanded so much that maybe there's insufficient training taking place.
Mm. Are we? What's the question I wanted to ask? Are we training people fast enough to meet the demand? You refer to population growth. Are we at pace?
No, I think a lot more has to be done with vocational training and skills development. I mean, it's not just in the service industry; it's across the entire spectrum. Bricklayers, carpenters. Once a person trains and acquires those skills, it's a skill for life. You never don't have that skill in the future. So, the more people that we can train to a good standard, the better it is for everybody. I think right now, if you need to find skilled tradesmen, it's very hard to find skilled tradesmen, and I think there are jobs for people with skills. Unfortunately, people looking for jobs don't have the necessary skills for the jobs that are available, so they say there are no jobs. But there are jobs for people with the skills, particularly vocational skills. Mm-hmm. As I say, carpenters, mechanics, bricklayers, chefs, this kind of vocational skills.
Mark, pressing for time, I'm going to ask you a word. What advice would you give to that 18-year-old self?
I think the advice I can give is that, first of all, you must believe in yourself. I mean, things might look bleak and you might be worried, but you've got to have the confidence to believe in yourself, that you can do something, and you must have the confidence to go out there and convey to people that you are capable, and you must have a good attitude, and you must be passionate about what it is you want to do. I do interview people from time to time, and it always frustrates me when the person, I ask them, and what do you think you can do in our company, and they just say anything. But they would be much more convincing if they said to me, well, look, I'm a chef and I can do this and I can do that and I can do something, and be positive and be confident about themselves and be positive that they can make a difference. I think because every employer is looking for people that can make a difference in their business. It's really important to us when we're recruiting that we find those people that are passionate, that can make a difference, that do believe in what they want to do. Because, as I say, I also get people that come in and I say, well, you're applying for this job as whatever. What do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 3 years? Well, the answer is, well, I'm going to be leaving and I'm going back to university. It's like, well, really? Should I give it to this kind of person, or should I give it to the person that sees a future?
Mark O'Donnell, it's been a pleasure having you on the Startup Hour.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We've been speaking with the chairman and managing director of Union Gold Group Limited, Mr. Mark O'Donnell. Union Gold has been in operation since 2000. Union Gold has branched out in many diversified sectors throughout the years in order to compete in the business world on multiple fronts. It has been indeed a very insightful and informative lesson, all rolled up in one. Catch us again next week at the same time, same day, as we bring you more influential business and thought leaders. Be inspired, and remember, the only person responsible for Zambia's development is you. So what are you doing about it?
This has been Startup Hour, bringing successful Zambian entrepreneurs, policymakers, and subject experts to share their stories. Startup Hour, in association with Power FM.
Power FM, ni boom,